Welcome back to your weekly roundup of everything that happened in Zenless Zone Zero, where we will cover everything that you missed inside and outside of the game. This week we have some interesting announcements that sound pretty wild, but apparently truth is stranger than fiction. But starting off, we're gonna have the in-game news. A new month means that all of the monthly shops have been reset, so again, if you suddenly find yourself short on Denny's or Notorious Hunt drops, you can buy some from Scott Outpost. Or alternatively, if you haven't gotten Trigger yet, there are also 5 discounted rolls for you in the Signal shop. Speaking of, worst case scenario, if you're worried about making enough pulls by the end of the patch to still try and get Trigger, it is expected that within the second half of patch 1.6, you can earn at minimum 3,600 polychromes, which is just over 10 pulls. That is of course a minimum if you are free to play and you have none of the passes. And depending on how much of the content that you've done from the first half of the patch, this can of course go up if you have unclaimed rewards. Otherwise, on Wednesday we will have a new event, Little Knight's Big Charge. This will be a simple one where we simply help out a little night boo run some errands for some various awards, like for example taking some pictures over at Port Elpis. And then on Friday we have the regularly scheduled Shiyu defense reset, which of course means a new round of buffs. This time around, since Trigger and Shien's banners are now active, the buffs are of course catered for them. To be specific, damage from aftershocks and EX specials are going to be increased by 25%, and also days will also be increased by 15%. Furthermore, after an enemy is stunned, their stun recovery speed is reduced by 15%. So in other words, you will have a bigger stun window to take advantage of the increased damage multipliers. What's more is that while they are stunned, electric and ether damage will also be increased by 40%. Since this Shiyu reset will bleed over into the start of the new patch 1.7, the ether buff will also help out Vivian when her banner does arrive. But that is it for the week in terms of in-game stuff. Since we are nearing the end of the patch, in-game stuff will understandably take a bit of a backseat as we instead start looking forward to stuff coming up in the future of patch 1.7. Speaking of, let's go over to the social media side of stuff. A new month means a new free wallpaper featuring none other than our lovely Trigger in both desktop and mobile versions. The link to download these wallpapers will of course be in the description below. But we also had a few new promotional videos being released over the past week, one of which is the PTSD-inducing teaser for Trigger, which has a Twitter event to go alongside it, where as usual, following the official Zenless Zone Zero Twitter account and then reposting the tweet linked in the description will give you a chance to win a Bangbu fridge magnet collection. That isn't the only Trigger related Twitter event though, as there is another one where you can help Trigger snipe an ethereal by going to the linked tweet and screenshotting the GIF as the crosshair is over the enemy. Once you have that screenshot, you can post that in the comments of the tweet with the corresponding hashtag. Doing so could earn you either a Bangbu rug or a random acrylic character stand. Unfortunately, we did not get a Trigger song EP, which I'm honestly kinda sad about. And with both Trigger and Soldier Zero anby not receiving any EPs, I really hope that this patch was sort of an exception and not the new norm. Because you already know that if Vivian and Hugo get a dedicated EP, they are going to absolutely slap, especially considering how good Hugo's battle theme is. However, we did get a different EP before Trigger's banner, but it was for the Starlight Knights instead, with a classic Sentai or Power Rangers feel shot in 4x3 with the scan lines and everything. In the song, we see what is presumably the 4 Starlight Knights within the world of Zenless Zone Zero. This official EP is also available to be listened to over on Spotify too if you enjoyed the song. Now, for the most part, the EP simply loops through the same handful of images, but we do get a shot of the Red Knight, who we all know Red is always the leader, before he transforms into his Starlight Knight outfit. Then at the end of the EP, as a sort of post-credit scene, we have the Cunning Hares recording a Starlight Knight-esque video to make Billy look extra cool. Now, this Starlight Knight EP was posted on April 1st, so it's possible that this was shown off as a simple little nice April Fool's joke. However, it may not be just a joke, especially considering the next topic. On the same day, April Fools, a social media post was made showing off a new Bangbu called Xbu. This was of course also just a joke tweet with an Xbox branded Bangbu only coming out after the X version, which would launch on February 30th, 2222, very clearly just being a fake tweet. But that brings us to the speculation zone, because a few days after those April Fool's jokes, there was a tweet announcing a Zenless Zone Zero official Xbox Spotlight. This Spotlight, which will be this Friday on April 11th at 10 AM Pacific or 1 PM Eastern, will be a live stream that will talk about the upcoming Xbox release and supposedly, quote-unquote, exciting new updates that you won't want to miss. Now, Friday the 11th is an important date because that is also going to be just under 2 weeks before patch 1.7 starts. So, as usual, we can also expect an official 1.7 livestream teaser that will go over the details of the new patch's story, as well as some of the official insight into the kits of Hugo, Vlad, and Vivian. The announcement for this stream will likely come in the next couple of days. But for those wondering, I'm fairly confident that the 1.7 livestream will be separate from the Xbox release livestream, with the patch 1.7 stream being at the typical time slot of 4 AM Pacific and 7 AM Eastern Time, so that the stream is still in the quote-unquote prime time for the Eastern audience. Meanwhile, since the Xbox player base and fan base is more skewed towards the Western audience, as opposed to Sony having a foothold in the East, the Xbox livestream is understandably at a time slot more suited for the Western audience. But don't worry, if the regular 1.7 livestream is too early for you and you aren't able to watch it live, as usual, I will have a recap going over everything that you missed ready on the same day, so keep an eye out for that. Now, all that being said though, with the Xbox April Fool's post being a sort of teaser for what was eventually going to come with the official release announcement, this then begs the question, was that Starlight Knight's EP on April Fool's Day also a teaser for what is coming in the future? Either possibly an actual Starlight Knight faction, especially since we did get a full face shot of that Red Knight leader, or with that after credits scene, maybe that was Billy filming an audition tape so that he could become a real Starlight Knight himself. In which case, maybe we could see an S-rank Billy coming soon. Personally, I think it was released on April Fool's Day on purpose, so that if something were to go wrong, or if things get delayed with regards to this new potential S-rank Billy, then they could just sweep it under the rug and say, it was only an April Fool's Day joke and nothing more than that. But to be fair, I thought the same thing with that Xbox Bangbu post, so who can tell really? But if there is any S-rank Billy or a Starlight Knight agent in the works, odds are we will have to wait a little bit longer to see them actually in-game, since we know that Jufufu and Yishuan from the Yunqui Summit, which is that martial arts faction, are both in the works too, since we encountered them this patch already. And of course, the Jufufu model is clearly done since we see her in-game. But as always, this is all simply speculation. We'll know for sure who will be coming in patch 1.8, or maybe who knows, it'll be considered patch 2.0 once the drip marketing starts in a couple of weeks. Aside from the Starlight Knight EP, we did get a bit of a tease as well at the end of the Soldier Anby story, where Billy did mention, offhandedly, wouldn't it be cool if he also tried out his old clothes? Which some people did see as a hint towards a potential S-rank Billy back then. So I guess now it begs the question, would an S-rank Billy be a Starlight Knight version, or would it be a Sons of Caledon similar to how Anby goes back to her roots? Personally, I'm really hoping that we get a Starlight Knight version, and then maybe he can be in a faction with the Red Ranger, or the red actual Starlight Knight that we saw in the EP, and then having the two of them work together. Although I know some people would like the idea of Billy, the ex-champion of the Sons of Caledon, going back and working with Lighter as well. But I mean, come on, the Sons of Caledon have so many people, and they also just got Pulchra. Do they really need more people coming back and joining their faction? Which is why I think that maybe they were dedicated to a new faction for the Starlight Knights with Billy. Otherwise, as always, thank you all for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, liking, commenting, and subscribing is greatly appreciated, and it'll help you stay notified for when I upload a recap video for the upcoming 1.7 livestream. Otherwise though, I'll see you next time. Bye bye!